Warning, this video is completely objective and none of this is my opinion. It is common knowledge that Fnaf 2 is a consensus top 3 game in the franchise, and that is absolutely where it should be on everyone's all-time ranking. Enjoy the video. Fnaf 2 really was the make it or break it point for Scott Cawthon. If the game failed, he would most likely not continue with the franchise since it didn't really develop past the first game's hype, or it would become an all-time classic which would send the franchise to the cosmos. Luckily or unluckily, depending on who you ask, the former didn't happen and now we have security. But I'm gonna try and break down why Fnaf 2 wasn't a disastrous sequel like most games, films and whatnot are, but a beloved game which a large amount of people rank over the first game. Enough blabbering, let's start. The three things that make a good sequel, in this case Fnaf 2, are a strong sense of familiarity with the first game, clear and concise story building that works with the setup of the first game and builds off of it, not against it, and I guess in this case the third thing is a fresh spin on the old gameplay, which I see a lot of people forget that Fnaf is a game franchise, so it has to have interesting gameplay. The things that Fnaf 2 doesn't stray away from are the camera system, the 6 AM formula, the growing difficulty as you progress through the night, and the atmosphere. The latter point may be a consequence of Scott most likely making Fnaf 2 from the first game's code, which is why to me the games feel like they are the same thing. But if the game was just a carbon copy of Fnaf 1, that would be very boring, but thankfully it offers major unique aspects that make the game a perfect sequel. Story building is what is still making the Fnaf franchise as a whole relevant. If it were just a couple of point-and-click games tossed in with a few free-roaming ones, you got something absolutely mediocre, but that isn't the case. Fnaf 2 is the game that started the story. I don't give a single fuck that Fnaf 1 put the foundations with the missing children and whatnot, cause Fnaf 2 introduced so many things to the story. And that is not me dissing Fnaf 1 for being a bad game. It's the complete opposite actually, and I prefer it over Fnaf 2 in most regards. But one thing you can't deny about the original is the lack of a strong story. I get it, this was Scott's last hurrah at making games, but come on dude, you could have done a little bit more.
Best I could do is maybe a $19 Fortnite card.
Well, what did we get in Fnaf 2 that was so crucial? We got the mini-games, which introduced us to the purple guy. We got information that the golden Freddy suit was maybe used to kill the children.
Someone used one of the suits. We had a spare in the back, a yellow one. Someone used it.
Later on, we figured out that it was a prequel, which opened up an entirely new can of worms. And those were just the stuff I could name off the top of my head. This game was what made Fnaf as a franchise a global phenomenon. And it's not a coincidence that the period after Fnaf 2 release was the period with the biggest hype because of its impact. People can debate which game is the best or which one gives you the greatest story building, but I will firmly say that it's a fact that Fnaf 2 was the most impactful Fnaf game of all time. But yeah, sure, Fnaf may have become relevant thanks to its story, but that wasn't why the game stuck with people.
Not the cap.
I mean, it was, but rather it was the immaculate gameplay. The simplicity of Fnaf's game mechanics deserve their own video since they are a work of art on their own. At its core, the gameplay is a carbon copy. Disappointing, I know. It still has that value mechanic that Fnaf 1 has and is explained by tech rules effectively, but damn near everyone has seen that video, so don't go watch it. The elimination of the power mechanic was replaced by the music box, and a flashlight was introduced so that you still had to manage some type of power. The addition of the mask also threw a wrench into the entire operation. It basically eliminates 8 out of the 10 animatronics from the equation, but the music box and Foxy were specifically made so that you can't hide in the mask like a bitch! Imagine how hard the game would have been if the toxic meter would have been added. It's hard enough as it is, that would have made it almost as hard as Custom Night. Did I mention that there are 10 animatronics now? Well, actually it's 11 if we count that purple guy thing in your office. Actually it's 13 if we count the 2 shadow animatronics. People could barely work with 4 animatronics. How the fuck were they supposed to manage 10? Huh, I guess they managed to somehow. Best way to describe Fnaf 2's mechanics and the game as a whole would be a clusterfuck.